The stars looked different from this part of the galaxy. Commander Vexthor stood at the viewport of his command ship, the Merciless, watching as his fleet prepared to enter the orbit of the blue planet below. His scaled fingers tapped against the polished surface of his armor, impatience growing with each passing moment. "Status report," he barked, not turning to face his crew. "All ships in formation, Commander," replied his second-in-command, Skarl. "The humans have detected our presence but have made no aggressive moves." Vexthor snorted. Of course they hadn't. According to the intelligence reports, these humans were barely space-capable. They had a handful of colonies in their immediate star system, and had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. They were primitive by galactic standards, perfect targets for the Crimson Fangs. The job was simple: intimidate the humans into surrendering mining rights on their resource-rich planet. The Zularian Mining Consortium was paying handsomely for a quick, clean operation with minimal bloodshed, though Vexthor and his mercenaries were authorized to use whatever force they deemed necessary. "Open a channel to the planet," Vexthor ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves." The main screen flickered to life, but instead of showing panicked alien faces, a single human male appeared. He wore a dark uniform with small markings on the shoulders that Vexthor assumed indicated rank. "This is Colonel Sam Miller of the Earth Defense Force," the human said calmly. "You've entered Earth-controlled space without authorization. State your business or withdraw immediately." Vexthor was surprised by the lack of fear in the human's voice, but he quickly dismissed it as ignorance. They simply didn't understand the danger they were in. "I am Commander Vexthor of the Crimson Fangs," he replied, puffing out his chest to display the red symbol etched into his armor. "We represent the interests of the Zularian Mining Consortium. Your planet contains resources that are valuable to more advanced civilizations. Surrender your mining rights peacefully, and we will allow you to continue your existence undisturbed." The human's expression didn't change. If anything, his eyes seemed to harden slightly. "The resources of Earth and its territories are not for sale or surrender," Miller replied. "We request that you leave our system immediately." Vexthor laughed, the sound echoing around the command bridge. His crew joined in, their various alien forms shaking with amusement. "Perhaps you misunderstand the situation," Vexthor said. "This is not a negotiation. The Crimson Fangs have subdued species far more advanced than yours. We are offering you the courtesy of surrender before we demonstrate our power." Miller's face remained frustratingly calm. "We understand perfectly, Commander. Earth does not respond to threats. This is your final warning to leave our space." The human's audacity angered Vexthor. Who did these primitives think they were? "Very well," he snarled. "A demonstration is clearly needed." He cut the transmission and turned to Skarl. "Target their moon base, the uninhabited one. Let's show them what happens when they defy the Crimson Fangs." Skarl nodded, relaying the orders to the weapons officer. Minutes later, a brilliant beam of energy shot from the Merciless, striking the small research station on Earth's moon. The structure exploded in a spectacular display, fragments scattering across the lunar surface. "Reopen the channel," Vexthor ordered, a satisfied smile on his face. Colonel Miller appeared again, his expression unchanged despite the destruction of the moon base. "That facility was automated," Miller said flatly. "No human lives were lost, but you've made your intentions clear." He paused, then added, "You have exactly 1 hour to leave our system. After that, we will respond appropriately." Vexthor couldn't believe the human's continued defiance. "You are in no position to make demands," he growled. "We have a fleet of warships. You have primitive spacecraft and limited weapons. If you resist, we will target populated areas next." Miller's response was unexpected. The human actually smiled slightly. "I understand you believe that." 1 hour, Commander." The transmission cut off. Vexthor turned to his senior officers gathered on the bridge. "They're bluffing. Prepare the next phase of the operation. We'll target their orbital defense platforms. Next. Commander." One of his officers, a small gray-skinned alien named Meek, spoke up hesitantly. "Our scout ships report unusual activity throughout the system. small objects appearing from hidden locations in their asteroid belt and from beneath the ice of their outer planets. Primitive defensive measures, Vexthor dismissed. Nothing our shields can't handle. There's something else, Mick continued. I've been analyzing their communications networks and they don't seem concerned. In fact, some of their news outlets are treating our arrival as a minor inconvenience. Skarl frowned. That doesn't make sense. Most species panic when we arrive. They're just humans, Vexthor said with certainty. Probably too primitive to understand the danger or too arrogant to accept it. Either way, they'll learn soon enough. As the hour passed, Vexthor grew increasingly annoyed by the humans' lack of panic. There were no desperate pleas for mercy, no hasty evacuation attempts from their space stations, no frantic military maneuvers. Just calm, methodical activity that their sensors couldn't quite identify. The deadline approaches, Commander, Skarl reported. Should we begin the next phase? Vexthor nodded. Target their main orbital defense station. Full power, make it spectacular. The weapons officer input the commands, then looked up in confusion. Commander, the targeting system is having difficulty locking on. What do you mean? It's a massive station. Something is interfering with our sensors, and I'm detecting thousands of small objects moving throughout the system, but they keep disappearing from our scans. Vexthor was about to respond when a chill ran down his spine. Something felt wrong. The humans were too calm, too prepared. It was almost as if... Incoming transmission from the planet, called the communications officer. Colonel Miller appeared, again. Your hour is up, Commander. I see you've chosen to stay. Very well. For the first time, Vexthor felt a flicker of unease. Your primitive weapons can't harm our ships. If you surrender now, we might still be merciful. Miller shook his head slightly. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? We're not primitive, Commander. We're just patient. As Miller spoke, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Multiple systems malfunctioning, Skarl reported, panic in his voice. Ships throughout the fleet reporting similar issues. Weapon systems powering down, shields fluctuating. Impossible, roared Vexthor. They can't have this level of technology. Miller watched calmly from the screen. They're just humans, he said, echoing Vexthor's earlier words. That's what everyone thinks, until they learn otherwise. The screen went dark as thousands of small objects suddenly appeared on their sensors, surrounding the mercenary fleet. In that moment, Vexthor realized his terrible mistake. The intelligence had been wrong. These weren't primitive beings at all, they were humans. And the Crimson Fangs were about to find out exactly what that meant. The bartender at the Cosmic Outpost wiped down the sticky counter with a cloth that had seen better days. Yorb used all 4 of his arms to clean, serve drinks, and manage payments at the same time. His Quatzian heritage made him perfect for bartending. Multitasking came naturally to his species. The bar sat on Nexus Station, a massive space hub where travelers from across the galaxy stopped to refuel, trade, and share stories. Today, like most days, the place was filled with mercenaries between jobs, traders looking for contracts, and the occasional drifter with nowhere else to go. In the darkest corner of the bar sat Crag, a veteran mercenary whose scarred face told stories of countless battles. His leathery skin was a patchwork of burns and cuts from decades of fighting. Most noticeable was his right arm, not flesh and blood, but a cybernetic replacement that hummed softly when he moved it. Krog's attention was fixed on the large screen above the bar. The news was showing a fleet of ships approaching a blue-green planet. Turn it up, Crag called to Jorb, his voice like gravel. The bartender flicked a switch, and the announcer's voice filled the room. Crimson Fang's mercenary group has entered the Sol system and appears to be engaging with the newly discovered species known as humans. Krag's drink slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. By the void, he whispered. Those idiots. Jorb made his way over, curious about the reaction. What's got you spooked? Aren't they just dealing with some new species? Craig's eyes darkened. New to the galactic community, yes, but there's a reason some of us call them Death Worlders. A few heads turned, conversations quieting as other mercenaries caught Craig's words. You've encountered humans before? Asked a young mercenary at a nearby table. Craig nodded slowly. 50 years ago, I was with the Red Claw Company. We took a job to raid a mining colony on, what did they call it? Proxima Centauri 4. He took a deep breath, memories clearly painful. We thought it would be easy. A small colony, minimal defenses, valuable resources, in and out, no problems. Craig tapped his metal arm against the table. We were wrong. More mercenaries gathered, around now, drinks in hand, curious about the story. Even Jorb stopped working to listen. What happened? Someone asked. We landed near the main facility. Standard procedure. Show of force, demand surrender, take what we want. Krog's eyes seemed to look beyond the bar, back into the past. They had about 200 people there. Miners, engineers, some families. Not soldiers, not warriors. He took a long drink before continuing. When we announced our intentions, they asked for 1 hour to discuss. We granted it, thinking they were organizing surrender terms. Around the bar, the news continued to show the Crimson Fang's fleet surrounding Earth. Craig glanced up at it, then shook his head. 1 hour later, they contacted us again. Their response was simple. No. No, repeated Jorb. Just no. So we started our attack. That's when everything went wrong. Craig's mechanical hand clenched into a fist. They'd spent that hour preparing, not evacuating, not panicking, preparing. He gestured to his cybernetic arm. A human mining engineer did this. Not a soldier, a civilian with a mining laser that he'd modified in less than an hour. He wasn't even trying to kill me, just disable my weapon. Another mercenary stepped forward from the crowd. This one had an electronic patch where his left eye should be. I was at serious edge, he said. Trade convoy protection. Pirates attacked, disabled our engines. We thought we were finished until a human merchant ship arrived. The one-eyed mercenary laughed bitterly. The human captain offered to help. The pirates thought it was a joke. One small ship against their fleet. 2 hours later, half the pirate ships were dead in space and the rest were running. As if a dam had broken, stories began flowing from around the bar. A blue-skinned alien described how a human teenager had outsmarted his entire squad during what should have been a simple hostage situation. Another told of humans repurposing farming equipment into devastating weapons in minutes. The thing about humans, Craig said, loud enough to quiet the others, is that they evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, you name it, they faced it. And instead of dying out, they thrived. On the screen, the news showed the Crimson Fangs destroying a moon base. The gathered mercenaries watched in silence. They don't fight, like other species, Craig continued. Most races develop specific tactics, predictable responses. Humans, they improvise, they adapt, they use your own strength against you. Jorb looked concerned. But the Crimson Fangs have modern weapons, shielded ships. Surely that counts for something? Craig laughed, a sound without humor. You think humans haven't been preparing for this moment? From the day they realized they weren't alone in the universe, they've been getting ready. A younger mercenary scoffed. For what? War? For anything, Craig replied grimly. It's in their nature. Their history is an endless cycle of conflict and innovation. Each war more terrible than the last, each peace bringing new technologies. He pointed to the screen with his cybernetic finger. Look at them. They're not panicking. That's not the reaction of a species about to be conquered. On the screen, humans could be seen going about their business in Earth cities, seemingly unconcerned about the alien fleet above them. If I were Vexthor, Craig said, I'd turn around and leave right now. But the consortium is paying them well, argued another mercenary. And humans are just humans. Craig stood up, towering over the others. Let me tell you what we learned 50 years ago. Humans don't just fight to win. They fight to make. Sure, you never want to fight them again. The bar fell silent. On the screen, the news showed a countdown timer apparently tracking some kind of ultimatum. They've given Vexithor a deadline, Craig noted. That's not good. Why not? Asked the young mercenary. It gives him time to plan his attack. Craig shook his head. No. It gives the humans time to prepare their response, and when humans prepare... He trailed off, looking at his mechanical arm. Every mercenary in the bar turned back to the screen, watching as the timer ticked down. Nobody said it, but they were all thinking the same thing. The Crimson Fangs had no idea what they were in for. Humans have a saying, Craig said quietly. God have mercy on my enemies, because I won't. I've seen what they can do with mining, equipment, and farming tools. I can only imagine what they can do with actual weapons. The timer on the screen reached 0. And now, Craig whispered, we're about to find out. Colonel Sam Miller walked briskly through the underground hallways of the Earth Defense Command Center. The massive complex, built beneath the Rocky Mountains, housed humanity's primary defensive operations. His footsteps echoed off the steel and concrete walls as he made his way to the war room. The heavy security doors slid open as he approached. Inside, 4 people sat around a large table, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays showing the alien fleet in orbit. The Crimson Fangs have destroyed our automated station on Phobos, Miller reported as he took his seat. All 17 AI units were lost, no human casualties. General Kate Williams nodded. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen numerous conflicts. They've made their choice, deploy the Ghost Fleet. Admiral John Rivera, head of Earth Space Forces, pressed his palm against a scanner on the table. Authorization confirmed. Ghost Fleet activating now. Across the solar system, hidden vessels began to power up. Some emerged from asteroid fields where they had been disguised as ordinary space rocks. Others rose from beneath the icy crusts of distant moons. A few detached from the underside of larger commercial ships. These were the Ghost Fleet vessels. Ships specifically designed for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Each was smaller than the mercenary vessels, but packed with countermeasures and experimental weapon systems that had never been deployed in actual combat. Swarm protocol is also ready, said Rivera. Awaiting your command. General Williams looked to the others at the table. Opinions? Dr. Alan Murphy, chief scientist of the Earth Defense Force, adjusted his glasses. The Crimson Fangs ships use a standard galactic design. Their shield systems will be vulnerable to our phase disruptors. However, I recommend the swarm protocol first. Let's test their point defense systems before committing the Ghost Fleet to direct engagement. Intelligence Director Olivia Peterson tapped on her screen, bringing up detailed scans of the mercenary vessels. Agreed. Their communications are still operating on expected frequencies. Babel defense is primed and ready to disrupt their coordination. Miller studied the holographic display of Vexthor's flagship. They're preparing to target our orbital defense platforms next. Typical mercenary tactics. Eliminate defensive capabilities, then threaten civilian targets. Williams made her decision. Admiral Rivera, initiate swarm protocol. Dr. Murphy, prepare Babel defense but hold until my command. Director Peterson, continue monitoring their communications for any change in strategy. Rivera nodded and spoke into his communicator. All stations, this is Admiral Rivera. Initiate swarm protocol. Authorization code Echo 9 Delta 7. From launch sites across Earth's surface, thousands of specialized drones were deployed. Each was no bigger than a coffee mug, but carried precision-cutting lasers designed to disable rather than destroy. They shot upward through the atmosphere, their small size making them nearly impossible to detect. Swarm units will reach the mercenary fleet in approximately 12 minutes, Rivera reported. Director Peterson suddenly straightened in her chair. General, we're picking up interesting chatter from across the galaxy. It seems our visitors have quite a reputation, but... She paused, a smile forming on her face. So do we. She transferred data to the main display. Our intelligence network has intercepted conversations from at least 6 different locations. Apparently, some mercenary groups have encountered humans before. Miller leaned forward. And they're concerned for their comrades? Not exactly, Peterson replied. They're placing bets on how long the Crimson Fangs will last against us. A rare smile crossed General Williams's face. Perhaps we should put on a good show, then. The room's atmosphere shifted slightly. None of them took pleasure in violence, but there was satisfaction in knowing humanity's reputation served as a deterrent. Swarm units approaching mercenary fleet, reported Admiral Rivera. Babel defense ready to deploy on your command. Williams nodded. Initiate Babel defense. Let's see how they handle confusion in their ranks. Dr. Murphy activated his system. Babel defense deployed. We're now intercepting and modifying their internal communications. On the main display, they watched as the mercenary fleet began to show signs of disorder. Ships that had been in perfect formation started to drift out of alignment. Some appeared to be changing course randomly. What exactly are they hearing? Asked Miller. Murphy adjusted his glasses again. Various things. Some are receiving false orders. Others are picking up what sounds like human laughter, mixed with their legitimate communications. A few are getting what they'll interpret as system warnings. Peterson added, We've also inserted the sound of children playing into their emergency channels. Psychological warfare. Nothing creates unease quite like hearing children laugh when you're expecting urgent messages. The mercenaries' confusion was evident as their formation continued to deteriorate. Then the first wave of swarm drones reached their targets. Swarm units engaging, Rivera announced. Ghost fleet in position and awaiting orders. On the display, they watched as the tiny drones attached themselves to the mercenary ships. With surgical precision, they began cutting through external weapon systems and communication arrays. They're trying to target the drones, Murphy observed. But their weapons are designed for larger threats. It's like trying to swat flies with a sledgehammer. 3 of the mercenary ships suddenly went dark, their power systems disabled by coordinated drone attacks. Should we hail them? Asked Miller. Offer them another chance to withdraw? Williams considered this. Not yet. Let them experience a taste of what happens when you underestimate humanity. Admiral Rivera, move the Ghost Fleet into visual range but maintain defensive posture. The previously hidden human ships decloaked, surrounding the mercenary fleet in a perfect containment formation. Though smaller than the alien vessels, there were many more of them, and they moved with uncanny coordination. The mercenaries are attempting to regroup, reported Rivera. Their flagship is trying to coordinate a response, but Babel defense is keeping them disorganized. General, Miller said quietly, we should remember our objective. We want them to leave and spread the word, not fight to the death. Williams nodded. You're right, Colonel. Prepare a transmission to their commander. Let's see if they're ready. To reconsider their options. As Miller drafted the message, the others continued to monitor the situation. The mercenary fleet, which had arrived with such confidence, was now in disarray. Their superior technology was proving useless against humanity's unconventional tactics. Message ready, Miller announced. Send it, ordered Williams. Miller opened the channel to Vex Thor's flagship. This is your only warning, he stated calmly. Surrender now, or we will be forced to demonstrate what happens when you mistake human restraint for weakness. To emphasize the point, Williams gave a subtle nod to Rivera, who relayed an order to one of the Ghost Fleet vessels. It fired a single shot, a precision strike that disabled the main engine of Vex Thor's flagship without causing a catastrophic failure. The human leaders watched the display, waiting for the mercenaries' response. The next few moments would determine whether this would end with surrender or with a demonstration of humanity's full capabilities. On the display, Vex Thor's ship hung motionless in space, surrounded by human vessels and swarmed by drones, its main engine dark and silent. Commander Vex Thor gripped the edge of the command console as his flagship shuddered. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, and the main view screen flickered between static and images of the human ship surrounding them. Status report, he roared, struggling to maintain his composure in front of his crew. His second-in-command, Scarl, looked up from a terminal with fear in his reptilian eyes. Commander, main engines are offline. Weapon systems at 30% capacity. Shields, fluctuating between 40 and 60%. How? Vex Thor demanded. How are they doing this? They're supposed to be primitive. Skarl shook his head. Unknown, Commander, but I'm detecting thousands of small objects attached to our hull and throughout the fleet, too small for our automated defenses to target efficiently. On a secondary screen, Vexthor could see the tiny drones cutting through weapon mounts and communication arrays with surgical precision. They weren't trying to breach the hull or life support systems, just systematically disabling the mercenaries' ability to fight back. And those ships, Vexthor muttered, staring at the human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. Where did they come from? Our scans showed nothing like this in the system. The communications officer, a blue-skinned alien named Ziv, turned from her station. Commander, we're receiving strange transmissions on all channels. Some appear to be false orders. Others are disturbing sounds. Block them, Vexthor ordered. I've tried, Ziv replied. But every time I close one channel, they appear on another. And now crew members are reporting hearing voices through the internal communication system, even when it's supposedly deactivated. Around the bridge, the command crew looked increasingly nervous. The Crimson Fangs had faced many opponents across the galaxy, but never anything like this. Another tremor ran through the ship as more systems went offline. The lighting dimmed as power was redirected to essential functions. We still have weapons, Vexthor growled. Target their main vessel and fire everything we have. The weapons officer tried to comply but shook his head. Targeting systems are malfunctioning. I can't get a lock on any of their ships. It's as if they're not really there. That's impossible. Vexthor slammed his fist on the console. A new voice filled the bridge, calm, human, and worryingly confident. This is Colonel Sam Miller of the Earth Defense Force. This is your only warning. Surrender now, or we will be forced to demonstrate what happens when you mistake human restraint for weakness. Before Vexthor could respond, a precise energy beam struck his ship. The entire vessel shuddered and more systems went dark. Main engines completely disabled, Skarl reported, his voice trembling. That was a targeted strike. They could have destroyed us, but they deliberately hit only the engine core. Vexthor stared at the viewscreen in disbelief. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were toying with him. His mighty fleet, veterans of 100 campaigns, was being systematically disabled by creatures that barely registered on the galactic scale. Commander, Ziv said quietly, we're receiving reports from across the fleet. 3 ships have lost all power. 5 more report critical systems failures. The rest are experiencing similar issues to us. Weapons disabled, engines compromised. And casualties? Vexthor asked, dreading the answer. That's the strange part, Ziv replied. Minimal. The humans seem to be deliberately avoiding lethal strikes. They're disabling our ships, not destroying them. A cold realization washed over Vexthor. This wasn't a battle, it was a message. The humans could have destroyed them at any time, but they were choosing not to. They wanted the mercenaries alive. We need to retreat, Skarl suggested, voicing what everyone was thinking. Vexthor's pride rebelled at the thought, but he knew his second-in-command was right. They were outmatched in ways he couldn't even understand. Prepare emergency power for a jump to, he began, but Skarl cut him off. FTL drives are offline on all ships, the reptilian officer reported grimly. We can't escape. The human's voice returned to their communication system. Commander Vexthor, your ships are disabled. Your weapons are ineffective. You have 2 options. Surrender and leave our system once repairs are permitted, or continue this pointless resistance and face the consequences. For the first time in his long career, Vexthor felt true fear, not just of defeat, but of something worse, humiliation. The humans weren't going to kill him. They were going to let him live with the knowledge that he had completely misjudged them. Commander, Ziv said, breaking into his thoughts. I'm picking up transmissions from across the galaxy. News of our situation is spreading rapidly. Of course it was. The mighty Crimson Fangs, defeated not in glorious battle but systematically disabled like troublesome children. Their reputation would be destroyed. Commander Vexithor, Miller's voice came again. We are waiting for your response. Vexithor looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. Pride demanded resistance, but logic and survival demanded surrender. Open a channel, he finally ordered. Ziv complied, and Vexthor straightened his posture as much as possible. This is Commander Vexthor. We accept your terms of surrender. The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but he forced them out. Miller's face appeared on the view screen, calm and professional. Wise choice, Commander. Power down all remaining weapon systems. Our repair teams will approach your vessels shortly. They will restore minimal function to your life support and basic operations. Once they confirm all weapon systems are permanently disabled, you will be permitted to leave our system. And if we refuse these repair teams? Vexthor asked, attempting to maintain some dignity. Miller's expression didn't change. Then you'll remain exactly where you are until you reconsider. The choice is yours. As the transmission ended, Vexthor sank into his command chair. Around him, his once proud bridge crew looked defeated and confused. How did this happen? Skarl asked quietly. Our intelligence said they were barely space-capable. Our intelligence was wrong, Vexthor replied bitterly. They led us believe they were primitive. They wanted us to underestimate them. Through the view screen, he watched as small human shuttles approached his disabled fleet. The repair teams Miller had mentioned, no doubt. What do we do now, Commander? Ziv asked. Vexthor's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. We comply. We leave. And then we make sure every mercenary group in the galaxy knows the truth about humans. And what truth is that? Skarl asked. Vexthor stared at the approaching human shuttles, the tiny drones still attached to his ship's hull and the ghost-like vessels surrounding his once mighty fleet. That they are not what they appear to be, he said softly. That they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. As the human repair teams boarded his ship, Vexthor realized that his defeat today would become legend. Not because he had lost, but because of who had defeated him. Not advanced aliens with superior technology, but humans. Just humans. And somehow, that made it infinitely worse. 3 months later, Crag sat in his usual dark corner at the cosmic outpost on Nexus Station. The bar was busier than usual. News had spread across the galaxy about the humans' formal recognition by the Galactic Council, and everyone wanted to discuss it. On the large screen above the bar, the council session was being broadcast live. Representatives from hundreds of species were gathered in the massive chamber. At the center stood 3 humans, Colonel Sam Miller, now Ambassador Miller, along with General Kate Williams and Admiral John Rivera. Jorb, the 4-armed bartender, set a fresh drink in front of Crag. Your prediction was right, he said. The Crimson Fangs didn't stand a chance. Crag grunted in acknowledgement but said nothing. His attention was fixed on someone approaching his table, a sight he never expected to see. Commander Vexthor, once the proud leader of the Crimson Fangs, now walked with a noticeable limp. Where his left eye had been, there was now a basic prosthetic that glowed faintly in the dim bar. His once gleaming armor was replaced with simple civilian clothes. May I join you? Vexthor asked, his voice lacking the arrogance it once carried. Krog gestured to the empty chair across from him, and the former mercenary commander sat down heavily. I heard you were on Nexus, Vexthor said. I wanted to meet the mercenary who actually survived an encounter with humans. Krog studied the fallen. Commander, you survived too. Vexthor laughed bitterly. Did I? They let most of us live, yes, but not without changes. What happened? Crag asked, genuinely curious. After we surrendered, they repaired our ships as promised, just enough to leave their system. Vexthor's hand went to his artificial eye. I lost this during the initial engagement, one of their drones. My own fault for trying to remove it personally. He took a deep breath before continuing. But before they let us go, they brought us to their planet, Said they wanted to ensure we wouldn't cause trouble in the future. Jorb had drifted closer, openly eavesdropping now. What did they do to you? Vexthor's voice dropped to a whisper. They modified our neural implants, standard mercenary equipment, used for tactical information and communication. But the humans, they reprogrammed them. Reprogrammed how? Crag leaned forward. Now, whenever we consider attacking humans or their allies, we experience our worst memories and fears simultaneously. Vexthor shuddered visibly. They said it was more efficient than killing us, that we'd serve as warnings. The bar had gone quiet as others listened to Vexthor's story. On the screen, Ambassador Miller was addressing the Galactic Council, his voice carrying through the bar. Earth and its colonies seek peaceful relations with all species, Miller was saying. We ask only for recognition of our sovereign territory and the right to develop without interference. A young mercenary at a nearby table scoffed loudly. They don't look so tough to me. In an instant, both Crag and Vexthor were on their feet. Krog grabbed the young mercenary by his throat with his cybernetic arm, while Vexthor seized him by the shoulder. Listen carefully, Crag hissed. They survived on a death world with predators that would make your blood freeze. They developed spaceflight while still fighting wars among themselves. Their entertainment involves simulating danger for fun. Vexthor leaned in closer, his artificial eye glowing brighter with emotion. I watched them disable my flagship by hacking into systems we thought were impenetrable. I saw them predict our tactics before we executed them. But they're just humans, the young mercenary choked out. Yes, Vexthor replied, releasing his grip. Just humans. Remember that when you're considering your next job. If it involves Earth or its colonies, walk away. Crag let go as well, and the young mercenary slumped back into his seat, rubbing his throat. On the screen, the Galactic Council proceedings continued. A council elder was speaking now. In light of the peaceful resolution of the incident with the mercenary group, known as the Crimson Fangs, and acknowledging humanity's technological achievements, the Council formally recognizes Earth and its colonies as a sovereign territory with protected status. Cheers erupted from the human delegation, while the rest of the council chamber remained respectfully quiet. Protected status, Jorb mused as he returned to his bar. That's rare for a new species. It's not about being new, Crag said. It's about being respected or feared. Vexthor nodded in agreement. The council isn't protecting humans from us. They're protecting us from humans. As if to emphasize his point, the broadcast showed a close-up of the human delegation. They looked ordinary compared to the exotic alien species surrounding them. No scales, no extra limbs, no unusual features. Just humans. You know what the most frightening part was? Vexthor said quietly. After they disabled our ships, their scientists came aboard. They examined our technology with such curiosity. One of them told me they'd never seen our type of FTL drive before, but within hours they understood how it worked better than I did. They adapt, Crag said simply. It's what makes them dangerous. The young mercenary, still rubbing his throat, looked confused. If they're so dangerous, why didn't they just destroy the Crimson Fangs? Why let you live? Vexthor's artificial eye dimmed slightly. Their leader, Miller, explained it to me. He said, a dead enemy might be forgotten. A living one who tells your story is much more valuable. Around the bar, conversations resumed, but there was a new undercurrent to them. The story of the Crimson Fang's defeat was already well known, but hearing it directly from their commander gave it new weight. What will you do now? Crag asked Vexthor. Spread the word, the former commander replied. Make sure everyone understands what humans really are. He gestured to his cybernetic eye. I can't fight anymore, not just because of this, but because of what they put in our heads. But I can talk. Crag nodded. Good. The galaxy needs to know. On the screen, the human delegation was leaving the council chamber, their formal recognition complete. Ambassador Miller paused at the exit and looked directly at the camera, almost as if he could see into the cosmic outpost. They're watching, Vexthor whispered. Always watching and learning. As Miller disappeared from view, Yorb turned down the volume on the broadcast. "Well," the bartender said, trying to lighten the mood. "At least they seem peaceful. As long as you don't attack them first." "For now," Craig agreed. "But remember, they evolved from predators, not prey. They're patient, they can wait." Vexthor raised his drink in a grim toast. "To humanity. May they never decide we're worth conquering." Across the galaxy, the legend spread. Humans might look unassuming, but provoke them at your own peril. They were not just another species, they were humanity, and underestimating them was the last mistake many would ever make.